The echo of pain, he stood in the middle of the empty room, quiet and still, breathing slow. The walls were clean, white, and silent, yet his body trembled as if danger waited inside. He had healed, or so everyone said. Therapy, meditation, and years of reflection. But inside his chest, something old still whispered. His name was Elias, a calm and thoughtful man who studied emotions for a living. He believed knowledge could free people from suffering. But one morning, while lecturing about healing, his voice cracked mid-sentence. His students stared and he froze, unable to breathe. That night he dreamed of the same room again, the same cold echo. In that dream he was young, hiding under a wooden table while someone shouted far away. The sound was faint, like thunder rolling through water. When he woke up, his heartbeat raced as if the past had never ended. He tried to understand it scientifically. He told himself, the brain learns patterns to protect us from danger. It repeats what feels familiar, even when it hurts. But the thought did not calm him. It only made the silence louder. He sat on his bed, touching his wrist where he felt a strange pulse. Every time he thought of peace, his body reacted with tension. He felt trapped between two realities, the mind that knew he was safe, and the body that kept repeating the pain it once learned. In his journal, he wrote, "Why does healing feel like fear dressed as calm?" He closed the book and looked out the window. The streetlights flickered like faint memories, half alive, half gone. Somewhere deep in his nervous system, an old code still ran, a loop written by pain, replaying without permission. He whispered to himself, maybe the body remembers even when the mind forgets. The next day, he decided to find out what his body was hiding, not with science alone, but by facing the echo itself. For that, he would have to return to the place he once escaped. He booked a train ticket to his old hometown. As the train moved, he watched the landscape blur into shades of gray. He wondered if healing meant erasing the past, or learning to live with its shadow without letting it control him. When he arrived, the air smelled of wet earth and rust. His childhood home stood quiet, smaller than he remembered. He walked to the door, feeling his heartbeat echo in his throat. He knew what waited inside was not a person, but a memory stored in his body. As he reached for the handle, his hand began to shake. He closed his eyes, whispered, "I am safe." But his chest burned with panic. That was when he understood something deeper. His mind believed the words, but his body did not. He stepped inside the old house and closed the door behind him. The wooden scent rose gently, mixed with dust and a distant chill. Light slipped through thin curtains, drawing pale shapes across the floorboards. His shoulders tightened and his jaw clenched without any clear reason. He listened to the quiet and noticed a buzzing under his skin. It felt like a silent alarm, steady and stubborn, always prepared. He whispered, "I am safe," and waited for the feeling to change. His mind agreed calmly, but his chest still throbbed with invisible thunder. Elias walked down the hallway toward the back room with the window. As a child, he had hidden there during arguments and sudden storms. The walls had been blue once, but now they were soft gray. A chair sat near the corner, facing the window like an old sentinel. He sat and placed his palms on his thighs, grounding himself gently. He watched the window and counted each breath, slow and patient, carefully measured. In through the nose, out through the mouth, longer on each exhale. His heart eased slightly, yet the buzzing stayed, like bees behind plaster. He decided to map what his body was telling him today. He opened his journal and wrote a simple heading, Bodily Weather Report. Under it, he listed sensations, tight throat, hot chest, cold hands, buzzing skin. He paused, then added, feelings, fear, shame, anticipation, and a strange aching tenderness. He reviewed the page and noticed a pattern starting to form. His body tightened most around the chest and throat like guarding speech. Old memories of silence visited, heavy and careful, soft and strict. As a child, he learned that quiet meant safety and fewer storms. He closed the journal and spoke aloud to the empty room. "I understand, body. You learned to protect me by shutting down voice. You kept me safe by freezing, by caution, and by perfect quiet. Thank you for surviving then, but I would like to choose now. The words felt sincere, but a tremor still ran through his ribs. He realized gratitude alone would not rewrite a pattern that saved him. The nervous system changes through repeated experiences, not only clever thoughts and understanding. Safety must be felt, not only declared, even by the wisest mind. He stood and moved slowly around the room, feet soft, steps steady. He pressed his hands against the wall and leaned into gentle resistance. His legs warmed, and his breath deepened, like waking a sleepy animal. He hummed a quiet tone, long and low, vibrating through his chest. The humming softened his throat and loosened his jaw with patient warmth. The buzzing became less sharp, like a radio finding a clearer station. He nodded slowly and said, "This is working. Keep going a while." He continued humming, then swayed, letting rhythm teach his body safe movement. A memory surfaced, unexpected and tender, his mother braiding his hair gently. She hummed the same low tone while the house settled after evening. His body uncoiled slightly, and a deep sigh rolled through his belly. He placed a hand over his heart and felt a calmer heat. He looked again at the chair by the window, the old sentinel. He imagined his younger self sitting there, legs tucked, eyes wide, careful. He pictured walking toward that child with slow steps, hands open, peaceful. In his imagination, he sat close and offered a steady shoulder. He spoke softly to the child. "I see you watching for storms. You did everything right. You kept us safe with silence and stillness. We survived because you were alert, patient, and sometimes invisible when needed. Now I will sit with you while we practice a new way." He waited for a feeling to rise, not forcing anything, just presence. A wave of sadness came first, cool and clean like night rain. He breathed with it, allowing his chest to widen, then soften with kindness. Beneath the sadness, he felt relief, shy but clear, like small light. He opened his eyes and wrote another line in his journal. "Today we practiced presence with the body and thanked the old pattern. We started teaching safety through movement, sound, and gentle imaginative connection. Changes will be slow and real, built through many moments of repetition." He stepped outside to the small backyard, surrounded by quiet fences. The afternoon sky stretched pale and open, carrying a hint of autumn. He stood barefoot on cool ground, letting his toes find the earth. He bent his knees slightly and let his weight drop, slow and honest. He scanned the horizon with soft eyes, naming neutral things around him. Fence, tree, brick, cloud, bird. Window, leaf, sky, corner, grass, shadow. Each word steadied his mind and invited his body into simple orientation. His shoulders lowered and his neck lengthened, as if remembering taller posture. He practiced a small exercise he taught students in his lectures often. Turn the head slowly left, then right, while breathing in safety. Notice the widest part of the room, and let the eyes soften. Invite the nervous system to see options, not only narrow threats. As he did this, he felt the buzzing fade a little further. The world seemed wider, and the body found more exits and entries. Safety grew like a subtle breeze, not dramatic, but persistent and honest. He smiled without forcing, simply noticing warmth growing where fear once lived. That evening, he called his sister for the first time in months. Their distance had always felt complicated, filled with careful pauses and polite sentences. They spoke about the house, the weather, and a cracked pathstone. Then she asked, "Do you remember the arguments, or only the quiet?" He said, "I remember the quiet mostly, and how loud it felt." She exhaled, then said, "I remember loud plates, and then long silence." He listened to the sound of her breathing settling into a rhythm. They both felt the old clock between them ticking without any apology. He chose courage in a small, specific, and grounded way that night. He told her, "I am learning to feel safe while speaking gently. I want to say something simple, and I will breathe while saying it. You are important to me, and I am sorry for my distance." There was a pause, and then he heard her voice warm slightly. She said, "I am glad you called, and I like hearing you breathe." They laughed softly, and the house felt less heavy, more gently inhabited. Their conversation ended with quiet gratitude, not perfection, but honest, kind progress. After the call, he prepared a simple meal and ate with attention. Chewing slowly, he noticed flavors clearly, and his stomach relaxed in response. The evening settled, and the house seemed to exhale through its windows. He washed the dishes, listening to the water, steady and rhythmic, soothing. Night returned, and he spread a blanket on the floor to rest. Instead of the bed, he chose the same room with the window. He wanted his body to learn that this room could hold safety. He lay on his back and placed a hand over his belly. He counted a slow rhythm, 4 in, 6 out, a gentle cadence. He felt his diaphragm move like a calm tide across the shore. Thoughts came, but he let them float past, tagged as not urgent. He repeated a phrase, "Nothing is wrong." The body simply remembers old instructions. Sleep arrived like a careful friend who removes shoes by the door. His dreams were less sharp, more like watercolor, vivid and kind. He saw corridors filled with open windows and air moving without fear. He walked past the chair and the child looked up, then smiled. At dawn, he woke with a quiet clarity resting inside his chest. He brewed tea and stepped outside again to meet the pale morning. A neighbor waved from a porch and he waved back with ease. This small exchange felt like proof, ordinary contact without hidden alarms. He knew this was not the end, not even close yet. Patterns that protected a child rarely vanish after a single brave visit. The nervous system requires repetition, consistency, and simple proof of safe outcomes. He decided to build a daily practice, precise, gentle, and realistic. He wrote a plan with 3 small rituals for personal and professional life. First, orienting eyes and naming objects to widen perception and choice. Second, humming and breath to soften the throat and warm the chest. Third, movement with pressure, like wall leaning or slow steps, to ground energy. He would track progress with curiosity instead of judgment or perfection. He would measure safety by recovery speed, not by absence of triggers. He would speak kindly to the old pattern whenever it reappeared. "Thank you for trying to help. Now please rest while I choose." Mid-morning, he visited the local library where he once read after school. The building held a familiar quiet, but it felt friendly this time. He found a book on neuroplasticity and began reading in a corner. A line caught his attention. Repetition under safety rewrites protective reflexes into flexibility. He closed the book and let the sentence settle into his body. He imagined each safe practice as a brush stroke on old walls, not covering history but painting a present where choice could breathe. He smiled, feeling respect for the child and the adult together. Leaving the library, he walked through the town square with slow, intentional steps. He listened for birds, counted 3 different calls, then kept walking softly. A vendor greeted him and offered a ripe pear with a grin. Elias bought it and ate while standing in sun, sticky and happy. The day stretched pleasantly and he returned to the house before sunset. He sat by the window again and looked at the chair. He no longer saw a sentinel guarding danger, but a companion witnessing change. He thanked the room for holding fear and practice with equal patience. As the sky darkened, a familiar tension tried to rise once more. He felt it early, greeting it like a guest at the threshold. He breathed. He hummed. He pressed his palms against the wall steadily. The tension softened again, decreasing faster than yesterday, a measurable, gentle improvement. He wrote in his journal before bed, "Progress is repetition under kindness. The body is learning new stories, and the past is becoming history. I do not erase the child. I invite him into choice. We walk together now, even when the wind sounds like old storms." He turned off the lamp and listened to the night circle the house. His heartbeat felt slower and his breath moved like a lake wind. Sleep gathered around him with quiet hands and a patient smile. He trusted morning to arrive with the next small lesson in safety. The body's secret language, the morning light slid across the wooden floor, slow and warm. Elias woke before sunrise, feeling a strange calm in his spine. It was not peace yet, but it was no longer panic either. He sat upright and listened to the quiet rhythm inside his chest. He remembered something his mentor once told him years ago. The body speaks before the mind understands. Learn to listen early. Back then, he thought it was poetry. Now he knew it was truth. His nervous system was not his enemy. It was his oldest historian. He made tea and stood near the window, watching thin mist outside. He noticed how each breath changed the light on the glass. When he tensed, the reflection blurred. When he relaxed, it sharpened again. It felt symbolic. The world clear only when the body trusted the moment. After breakfast, he spread his notebook on the floor and began writing. "Goal for today," he wrote, "learn to speak the body's secret language." Beneath it, he listed what he already knew from years of research. Fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, the 4 survival songs of the body. He realized his nervous system had sung all 4 over the years. As a child, he froze, hiding from noise and conflict. As an adult, he fawned, pleasing everyone to avoid tension. When cornered, he fled inward into silence and deep thought. He smiled softly, recognizing the brilliance in his own defenses. The body did not betray him. It only tried to predict safety. Each reaction was a memory, not a mistake, written by old events. But now those reflexes were outdated scripts, ready to be rewritten. He rolled a mat on the floor and began his grounding ritual. He placed both hands over his belly, then on his heart. He spoke quietly. "This is safety. This is warmth. This is choice." The words felt like code, teaching his body a new rhythm. As he breathed, an image rose behind his closed eyes. Water. A deep river running slowly, carrying fallen leaves without effort. He imagined placing his fears into that current and letting them drift. He felt the muscles near his ribs unclench, like doors opening in sequence. Suddenly, a tear slipped down his cheek without warning or pain. It was not sadness, but recognition, an ancient memory releasing quietly. He whispered, "You do not need to guard anymore. I am here now." His body trembled once, then stilled, as if exhaling a century-old breath. Later that day, he visited the local forest behind the old town. The trees stood tall, each one older than his memories of fear. Birds called in fragments and dry leaves crunched beneath his boots. The forest was alive, grounded, and endlessly patient, like truth itself. He found a fallen trunk and sat cross-legged, back straight and aware. He decided to test something he once read about trauma integration. When the body feels fear, give it movement instead of argument. So he gently pressed his feet into the earth, alternating left and right. He noticed a pattern. With each step, his chest relaxed a bit more. His vision widened and sounds became fuller instead of threatening. He realized safety was not silence, but expansion, a sense of space. He smiled again, whispering, "The forest feels like therapy without words." A soft wind passed through branches, brushing his hair like approval. He stayed still, eyes open, breathing evenly, heart syncing with the breeze. It felt as if nature mirrored his nervous system, flexible, adaptive, ancient. The forest, too, carried old storms, yet never forgot how to grow again. After a long walk home, he cooked dinner in silence, focused and present. Each motion became mindful. Washing rice, cutting vegetables, stirring gently. His hands no longer shook the way they once did. This ordinary act felt sacred, proof of nervous system peace and progress. He sat to eat, thinking about how many people live like he once did. Calm on the surface, but with old alarms still ringing deep inside. He wrote in his notebook again, "Healing begins when awareness meets patience." Then added, "But it continues only when patience meets repetition." Later that night, he opened an old wooden box from a drawer. Inside were letters he wrote to himself during therapy years ago. One caught his attention. "Dear me, you will know peace when silence feels safe." He smiled, realizing that today silence did feel safe, at least for a while. He placed the letter on his desk and turned off the lamp. Before sleep, he placed a hand over his heart and whispered gratitude. He could feel his pulse steady and calm, no longer running from echoes. His mind rested, but his body, for the first time, began to trust stillness. Yet, somewhere deep in the night, a dream stirred differently this time. He saw himself as a boy standing in the same house again. But this time, the boy looked directly at him and asked softly, "If I stop protecting you, who will?" Elias woke up before dawn, breathing slow but thoughtful. He realized the boy was not gone, only waiting for direction. The body does not release without replacement. It needs new instructions. Tomorrow, he decided, he would teach the child not how to hide, but how to rest. He wrote one last line before sunrise filled the room again. The body remembers pain, but it can also remember peace if peace is practiced. Teaching the body to trust again. The morning light entered the room like a quiet visitor. Elias sat on the floor with his tea, breathing in slow circles. He felt the weight of his dream still resting inside his ribs. The boy's voice echoed gently. "If I stop protecting you, who will?" He stared at his hands, noticing how calm they looked today. The tremor that once lived in his fingers was fading with time. His body was not against him. It was simply waiting for leadership. He whispered, "I will protect us now, not through fear, but through choice." He decided to create a small ritual for his younger self, something that would teach safety through repetition, not just thought. He placed a second cup of tea on the floor beside him. In his mind, that cup belonged to the child who lived inside him. He said softly, "You can rest now. I am here. I am not leaving." Then he breathed deeply, allowing warmth to spread through his chest. His shoulders loosened as if the air itself believed his words. This was not imagination. It was nervous system training through compassion. After finishing the tea, he walked to the mirror across the room. The reflection looked older, but the eyes felt both familiar and new. He said, "We have carried pain like armor, but armor is heavy." His throat tightened slightly, then relaxed after a long exhale. He smiled faintly and touched the glass, feeling the coolness beneath his fingers. His reflection smiled back, patient and kind, not demanding perfection. He realized the nervous system did not want silence. It wanted connection, and that connection could begin inside before extending outward to others. He decided to test this truth in real-life situations. So later that day, he met his old friend Maya for lunch. They had not spoken deeply in years, only polite exchanges at events. But today, he wanted to practice being open without performing calmness. They met at a small cafe near the river filled with morning chatter. The smell of roasted beans and fresh bread floated through soft sunlight. Maya smiled warmly, saying, "You look lighter somehow. What changed?" Elias paused, aware of the familiar tightness returning to his chest. Instead of hiding it, he placed a hand on his heart under the table. He breathed slowly, noticing the pulse in his palm steadying with rhythm. He replied, "I stopped chasing peace and started teaching my body to feel safe." Maya tilted her head, curious. "You mean like therapy work?" He nodded. "Yes, but more like education. My body needed new lessons." She smiled. "I think mine could use a few too." They laughed softly, and something inside him relaxed even more. The conversation flowed gently, like a stream finding its way through stones. He noticed something remarkable by the end of lunch. His body had stayed present, not frozen, not overly alert. His breathing was even, and his hands had not trembled once. He felt grateful, realizing this was what rewiring looked like in real time. On his walk back home, he thought about what safety truly meant. It was not the absence of discomfort, but the presence of self-trust. His nervous system needed proof that discomfort did not always equal danger. And every calm conversation was one more piece of that proof. Later that evening, he returned to his grounding room again. He lit a small candle and sat cross-legged in front of it. The flame danced slowly, bright but soft, like a steady heartbeat. He whispered, "Today, the body learned that people can be safe too." He remembered something he once read in a neuroscience journal. The body updates its safety code only when calm meets connection. Isolation keeps the code old, but connection rewrites it with new evidence. He smiled, realizing that the tea, the touch, and the laughter were all lessons. He picked up his journal and began to write slowly. "Today we practiced safety in company, not just in solitude." The body did not hide. It stayed and listened. Trust grows through repetition, not miracles. The next day, Elias decided to visit the sea after many years. He took a small bus to the coast, carrying only water and his notebook. The wind smelled of salt and memory, sharp yet comforting. Waves roared softly, endless and ancient, moving like a living pulse. He stood barefoot near the edge, letting cold foam touch his toes. His body shivered, but it was not fear. It was life responding. He closed his eyes and matched his breath with the rhythm of the tide. In, out, steady, grounding, ancient, true. His mind quieted and his heart synchronized with the movement. He whispered, "This is what regulation feels like, movement without panic." He realized the sea was teaching the same lesson his body needed. Waves rise, fall, and return, but never stay trapped in one shape. After a while, he sat on a rock and opened his notebook again. "Lesson of the sea," he wrote. "Nothing stays tense forever when allowed to move. The nervous system heals through rhythm, not control. Peace is not stillness. It is the freedom to flow." As the sun began to set, he noticed something unexpected. His body no longer waited for a trigger or surprise. It was simply existing, breathing, and sensing without constant preparation. This was new, fragile, but undeniably real. He smiled, feeling the salt on his lips, the wind on his face. He whispered, "The body is learning trust, one breath at a time." And for the first time, his chest did not tighten when he said the word trust. When he returned home that night, the old chair by the window waited. He sat down, holding the warmth of the sea still inside him. He could almost feel the boy sitting beside him, quiet but relaxed. Elias said gently, "You can rest now. We made it through the storm." The boy smiled faintly, placed his head on Elias's shoulder, and vanished. Not gone, integrated, like a note blending back into a song. Elias closed his eyes and whispered, "Safety is a feeling that grows roots slowly." He felt his breath deepen, calm and effortless, like tide returning home. Rewriting emotional memory. The next morning arrived with soft golden light spreading through the curtains. Elias woke up before the alarm, feeling lighter than he had in years. His dreams had been quiet, not empty, just peaceful and steady. His body no longer woke him with the pulse of invisible danger. He stretched slowly, breathing into the space between his ribs. The air felt clean, his chest open, his shoulders free of old tension. But deep inside, a quiet question still stirred like a cautious echo. Can peace survive the storm, or only the silence that follows it? He knew healing was not tested in calm moments, but in contact with chaos. So he decided to go back to the city where his adult life once fractured. It was the place where he had faced exhaustion, heartbreak, and burnout. The place where his body first learned that calm could not be trusted. As the train sped toward the skyline, old sensations began to surface. His throat dried, his palms warmed, his stomach fluttered like nervous wings. His brain whispered, "This is not danger. This is memory playing old film." He nodded, breathing slowly, letting his awareness separate past from present. When he stepped onto the platform, the city hummed with familiar rhythm. Horns, chatter, footsteps, and 1,000 lives rushing through concrete corridors. He paused, allowing the sound to pass through instead of pushing it away. He whispered, "I am here now, not then." And the noise softened around him. He walked toward the small park near his old apartment. He remembered how many nights he sat there unable to cry or rest. The bench still stood under the same tree, its paint chipped but loyal. He sat again, this time not as a victim but as a witness of change. He placed a hand on his chest and noticed the rhythm, slow, even. His body was scanning the same place but reading it differently now. This was neuroplasticity in motion, emotional memory being rewritten through safety. The body does not forget pain, but it can learn new meanings for old symbols. A child nearby laughed as pigeons scattered into the air. The sound broke something open in him, not pain, but awe. His nervous system recognized the noise not as threat, but as life. He smiled quietly, realizing his body was finally choosing a new interpretation. As he sat there, an old colleague named Darren recognized him from afar. They had once worked together in a stressful clinic years ago. Darren approached with a warm grin, surprised to see him again. "Elias," he said. "You look different, calmer." "What changed?" Elias paused, feeling his body react with a small wave of anxiety. His shoulders tensed slightly, expecting old competition or criticism. But he exhaled slowly, keeping eye contact, and said, "I changed how I listen." Darren laughed. "To people?" Elias shook his head. "To my body." They walked together toward a coffee stall and ordered 2 cups. As they spoke, Elias noticed the familiar triggers appearing faintly. The pace, the tone. But instead of fighting them, he softened into awareness. He felt the tension, acknowledged it, and returned to the rhythm of breath. His calmness affected the air between them, slowing the conversation naturally. Darren eventually said, "You used to hold your breath when thinking." Elias smiled. "I still think, but I breathe through it now." They both laughed, and it felt like a gentle reunion between past and present selves. After parting ways, Elias sat by the river that ran behind the park. He took out his notebook and wrote, "Emotional memories are not erased. They are redefined. Healing is not deleting pain. It is teaching the body a new story. Today, my body remembered the city but without fear." He watched the water ripple under the bridge, a mirror in motion. He realized how similar it was to the nervous system's behavior. When disturbed, it ripples, but when given time, it returns to stillness. That return, he thought, is the essence of emotional regulation. Later in the evening, he met Maya again for dinner near the riverside. She noticed the change before he even spoke. "You're grounded," she said, "like someone who stopped defending peace." He nodded. "Because peace no longer feels like weakness. It feels like strength." They talked about how people often mistake healing for perfection, how the real test of growth is not never feeling triggered, but recovering faster. Elias said, "Healing is when the body returns to calm quicker than before." Maya nodded. "Like resilience becoming muscle memory." After dinner, they walked quietly through the streets, letting silence say enough. Elias realized something profound. His nervous system trusted not only solitude now, but also connection, sound, and movement. The things it once feared. This was what true regulation meant. Freedom across all environments. When he returned home that night, he lit a single candle by the window. The flame flickered gently, casting warm shapes across the old walls. He sat with his notebook and wrote his first letter to his future self. "Dear me, the nervous system is a loyal friend who never forgets lessons. Teach it through love, not fear, and it will follow your guidance. Peace is not a destination. It is a dialogue between body and mind." He closed the notebook, exhaled deeply, and whispered, "I am safe here." His heart believed it fully, and this time, so did his body. The house creaked softly as night stretched over the town. In that quiet space, Elias realized something subtle but extraordinary. The pain had not disappeared, but it no longer owned his reactions. The memory remained, but it now served meaning instead of control. He stood up, walked to the mirror again, and looked into his own eyes. He saw no fear, no shadow of the trembling man he once was. He smiled faintly and said, "You have rewritten the code." His reflection smiled back. Steady and proud, breathing in perfect rhythm, as he turned off the light, the candle flame flickered once, then steadied. He whispered to the quiet room, "Tomorrow we teach others what we learned." And with that promise, he felt his heartbeat slow into deep and honest rest. The final test of peace. The next morning began with rain, soft and steady against the windows. Elias opened his eyes and felt the rhythm of droplets match his breath. The world outside looked calm but alive, moving without fear or rush. He smiled, realizing the rain sounded like the heartbeat of the earth itself. He made tea and sat near the candle that had burned through the night. Its wax had melted unevenly, creating small rivers down the glass jar. He traced them with his finger, whispering, "Everything that melts also transforms." His heart felt open, his mind quiet, his body grounded and listening. It had been months since he first returned to his childhood home. In that time, his life had shifted gently but completely. His lectures were no longer about theories but about felt understanding. Students listened differently now, sensing his peace more than hearing his words. He called his new seminar series The Language of Safety. It taught how emotions speak through the body long before the mind interprets, how healing happens not through control but through awareness and repetition, and how peace is trained like muscle, one mindful breath at a time. The first class was held in a quiet hall filled with soft morning light. Around 20 people sat in a circle, each carrying a story of pain. Some trembled, some avoided eye contact, some forced smiles of survival. Elias began not with words, but with silence, a silence that welcomed. He said softly, "Your body is not broken. It is just loyal to old lessons. Today, we begin teaching it a new definition of safety." His voice was calm, each word slow and deliberate, like waves meeting sand. He guided them through breathing, grounding, and gentle self-observation. He noticed one woman shaking slightly, her breath shallow and uneven. He walked closer, knelt beside her, and said quietly, "You're not doing it wrong. Your body is remembering something. Let it speak. We will not rush it." She nodded, tears forming, and slowly exhaled for the first time in minutes. The group followed his lead, and the room softened with shared release. It was not therapy, it was education through empathy, a mirror of truth. When the session ended, people lingered, quiet but changed in small ways. Elias felt gratitude swelling in his chest, a warmth that reached his fingertips. But peace, he knew, must be tested to be trusted, and that test came sooner than he expected. 2 days later, he received a message from his sister, Clara. Their estranged father was ill, asking to see them both one last time. His body tensed instantly, an old reflex rising from deep in his spine. For a moment, he felt like the frightened child again, hiding under tables. He sat still, breathing as the old pattern tried to take control. His mind whispered, "You can choose now. You are no longer trapped." He closed his eyes, placed a hand on his chest, and repeated, "I am safe." Slowly, the heat in his throat began to cool and breath returned. The next morning, he traveled with Clara to the hospital on the edge of town. The sterile smell, the white walls, the distant beeping, all familiar triggers. But this time, his nervous system met them differently, not as enemies, but signals. He whispered silently, "Observe, do not absorb," and kept walking forward. When they entered the room, their father lay quietly on the bed. Age had softened him. Time had turned his anger into silence. For a moment, none of them spoke. The air felt heavy with history. Then Elias stepped closer and said, "Hi, Dad." His father opened his eyes, weak but clear, and smiled faintly. He whispered, "You grew into someone peaceful. I can feel it." Tears filled Elias's eyes, but they were warm, not sharp like before. He replied softly, "It took me a long time to stop running from myself." His father nodded slowly, whispering, "The body remembers, son. Mine never forgot." Elias smiled, realizing his father understood more than he expected. In that moment, all the years of tension dissolved into quiet understanding. Not forgiveness spoken aloud, but forgiveness lived through stillness. As they left the hospital, Clara turned to him with wet eyes. "You stayed calm," she said. "I was waiting for you to break." He smiled. "I didn't stay calm by avoiding the pain. I stayed calm because I accepted it." She nodded slowly, whispering, "You've really changed, Elias." That evening, he walked along the empty street under fading light. The rain had stopped, leaving small mirrors across the pavement. He looked down and saw his reflection ripple in a puddle, then settle. It reminded him how peace behaves. Disturbed, then restored. Never destroyed. Back home, he sat by the same window where his story began. He opened his journal, the pages now filled with years of learning. He wrote his final entry, "Hand steady, heart calm." Healing is not forgetting the wound. It is learning to walk without guarding it. The nervous system repeats pain until it is convinced that safety is real. I have proven to my body that peace is not danger. And now, every breath I take teaches that lesson again. He closed the journal and placed it beside the candle. Then he whispered to the empty room, "The body listens when love speaks softly." The flame flickered once, like a nod, and the air turned warm and golden. As night deepened, he felt no separation between mind and body anymore. The child within him was quiet. The echoes had turned into music. He leaned back, eyes closed, breathing in rhythm with the rain's return. His last thought before sleep was simple and whole. The past shaped me, but peace chose me.